Welcome back, guys. In our last lecture, we went over the APIs. We went over the APIs for the openweathermap.org. I showed you how to get the data. This is the data that's going to be going into our Xcode. Before, if you just do the example, you press this example for APIs for city name. If most of you got this, it's because you haven't signed up for the openweathermap.org. And like I said in the last video, it's free. So whenever you sign up, you put your API at the end of this equal sign, you will get the data. So in today's lecture, we're going to talk about how we're going to load that data from that website and bring it back to our view controller. So the first thing we need to do is write code and present our URL in our weather service class. And before we do that, let's comment out a couple of codes because we're not going to need them right now. We'll probably use them later, but for right now, let's comment it out. And this. Okay, so we have no errors. All right, so let's start off by creating a path variable. And this is going to be equal to our URL. So let's grab our URL. Let me go back here, grab your URL. And for those of you that don't know where your API key is, it's going to be in the members tab after you sign up. And then you click on API and then it'll show you your API code and you replace it with that. So let's go back to Xcode, add in our URL so we have our path. The next variable that we need to add is our URL. And not just it. So our URL is going to be equal to an NS URL, and this is basically a special URL that has a string path. So string, and so the string is going to be our path. Okay, now let's add a variable for session, a reference to our session. So let's create a session variable. And this is also going to be equal to NSURL, but it's going to be a type of NSURL. Let me add a space. NSURL session. And this is also going to be a shared session. And now let's add a task. We need to create a task for our session to pass in. So let's add the task variable. And it's going to be equal to our session. And now we need to have a data task with a request. And this request is going to involve a completion handler. So our URL is going to be URL. And our completion handler is going to have 3 defined variables. So I think this needs to have parentheses. Well, URL. And let's see, we click on this and press enter, and yeah, it puts this parentheses here. And I believe this needs to be wrapped. So here's our 3 variables that are going to be defined. So the first one is going to be NSData, so we'll leave it at that. And the property is going to be named data. This one is going to be NSURL response. Our property is going to be response. And last but not least, error. So let's add in the error property. And this needs a void in. So after it runs the completion handler, it's going to do nothing. So we need a void in. So now that we have our task, we need to have our code. We need to basically print out our data after we run our application just to see if it's grabbing the information from open weather map. Okay, so let's build a print function. And usually when you have a print function, it usually only returns a string, and our data is actually going to be a double. So in order to convert that into a string, first we need this. In order to convert that to a string, we're going to have to put it under backslash and parentheses. So this will convert it into a string. Okay, and the last thing we need to return is our task. So we're gonna put task dot resume. Okay. So now let's build and run and test it out. And if you did it correctly, you should get this. Okay, so let's put London. Right now it's going to pull, well right now it's not pulling the information from the internet, because since we haven't paid for the service, it's not letting us get a HTTPS, which is secure. The only time when you'll get that is if you pay for the service, and that's the only URL that Xcode will accept. So there's a workaround to this. So in order to solve this, let me teach you how to kind of troubleshoot when you run into problems like this. So we're gonna grab this information and go to the internet. We're gonna troubleshoot this. Copy. Let's open our browser. I have Safari. And let me just type that in. See what we pull. I usually like going to Stack Overflow. And so yeah, this person is running to the same problem. And here's the way to solve it right here. Other people did there's others, but this one has the check mark, so let's look at that. So it's saying that we need to add a app transport security setting, and it needs to be added to our info plist. So let's do that. Let me find a place where I can copy and paste. I know in the old Xcode, when you print this, it prints it out as this, but in an updated 7.3 version of Xcode, even when you print this out, it comes out as app transport security. So let's do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another property list, and we're going to paste it here. So yeah, it shows up as this. So this is what I'm talking about. And let's go back to our Safari Stack Flow. So it says app transport security settings. It's a dictionary, and it's calling this a silver bullet. It's saying that all you need to do is this one, it'll work. So let's do that and see if it works. So I think the next one that we need to do is allow arbitrary loads. Make it a boolean and mark it as yes, but it has to be under app transport security settings. So the other one is this, and like I said, the same goes for what I said about this one in Xcode. In the earlier versions of Xcode, it came out like that. So before you add it, in order to add it under this information property list, You need to make sure the arrow is pointed down and then click the plus sign. So let's paste. I think that's the one we want. Yeah. So it says it's supposed to be a Boolean and switch it to yes. So once this is saved, let's go back to our weather service and let's build and run. Of course, we have to stop it, build it. And now let's run it. So even if you put any city, it's still going to pull up London because this is the URL we're pulling. I'll show you how to fix that in the next videos, but let's press OK. So yeah. So this is what you're supposed to be seeing. OS dispatch data, and then brings this code here. I know in the earlier version of Xcode, I believe before 7.3, it also pulls up a lot of data, like pixels. I guess computer pixel is what the computer reads. But in this version of Xcode, it pulls up this information. So if you have this one or the one I explained before, you should be good. So that's it for our lecture, and thank you for watching.